Welcome, everyone, to our LinkedIn Live event today, Making MHE Automation a Reality. We're glad you're joining us. My name is Kristi Montgomery. I'm from Kenco, and I have one of my customers, Jeff Kester, here, who heads up logistics and customer operations for Blue Buffalo. And I just wanted to take the time today to really pick his brain on automation and how you get started with that. We hear so much about warehouse of the future, and I'm in innovation, so I get excited about the bright shiny objects, but really it's a journey. And so I just wanted to kind of talk to Jeff about this journey and how it's been successful with him and how we've worked together to kind of deliver some of this stuff. And so Jeff has a deep working knowledge of warehouse operations as well as automation technologies. And so we just wanted to ask him to have a conversation with us today. So thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thanks, Jeff, for being with me today.
Well, thank you, Kristi. It's really good to be here with you today. I mean, we've known each other for a lot of years, even before venturing down this path of today's slate of automation. You know, we've been through warehouse startups and a number of sessions at your innovation lab, and it's just great to be continuing our partnership. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Well, I know that a lot of folks out there are really struggling, Jeff, with this whole concept of automation, and particularly when you think about a brownfield operation where you've been running things a certain way for a long time, and there are so many options that are out there. So maybe you could give us all kind of an idea of how Blue Buffalo went about deciding that this was automation was the right path for you, and then how you got jump started in that process.
Yeah, that's a great question. Where to start? I mean, in Blue Buffalo, first we had some work to do on our network roadmap, just to support our growth and our objectives and our cost goals as a company. So, you know, we had moving parts, and we had some to get our network road laid out. Do we have the right buildings in the right places with the right square footage and the right 3PLs, and get all that foundation in place before you start making a decision on where to invest. Obviously, you want to have, you know, the right building. You want to make sure you're going to be at that site for the right duration of time before you head down that path of investing in automation. So we had a fair amount of work to do there. But then once you get to a point where you identify the location where you might want to invest in automation, then it's honing in within the walls of that building are which activities, which repetitive motions lend themselves to that, you know, automation. What movements in your warehouse have the best opportunity for automation? There's operationally as well as financial components of that decision. So, you know, it might be full pallet movements from unload to put away. It might be layer pick movements. I mean, there's a number of things that you could dial in on and say that this is an opportunity for automation. But once you identify an activity or a set of activities to automate, work on quantifying those costs. You know, the cost of those movements, that represents the cost that you can drive out of your system, out of your operations as you head down that path. I mean, this sounds like basic stuff that I'm sharing, but it is so critical to make sure you understand where you're at and what you're automating before you head down that path, because you really have to make sure you're seeking a tangible ROI. You don't want to just automate to automate so you can say, hey, look, we have robots. You know, you have to make sure you feel confident that you're going to take costs out, that you got the right environment before you make that investment, because you're in for a lot of work in front of you and you want to make sure you're going to have a payback.
I think, Jeff, one of the things you said is so critical. A lot of companies think about automation in terms of everybody else is doing it, so I need to do it. But taking a step back and understanding what the strategy is for your organization and how automation can help you hit that strategy, I find oftentimes, again, would seem to be a common sense thing to do, but it's not always where people start. And so taking that initial step to say, you know, do I even have the right facilities in the right places? And then what does my layout look like? And then what do my processes look like? I think it's critical to start all the way back at the beginning. And I think people a lot of times start at, hey, I found this really cool vendor. I found this really cool robot. How can I make it fit into my operation? And so one of the things I like to talk about is we don't want to be a solution in search of a problem. So understanding what our problems are and why we want to automate is so critically important. And so I think you started outlining this, but I'd love to hear more about, in my opinion, going about this in a very methodical way, as well as small incremental steps versus the big bang theory, is better for longer term success, I think. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to say there's a right or a wrong answer. I mean, there's, it can be exciting to build a greenfield operation and go fully automated from the ground up, but that's got a cost, that's got a risk profile. So, I say there's not a right or a wrong answer. Is what does the business need from you, and how much is the business willing to spend to support that? How quickly do you need to move, and what's your roadmap? But the cost and the risk associated with a greenfield, fully automated warehouse startup, that's a big cost and a big risk, and that's not always the most practical option. So, practically, and the approach we've taken is take that incremental approach, starting with an operation that you feel good about. It's beneficial to have a stable operation to build upon with that incremental investment. To bet into that.
Yeah, I think another thing you said, which I always go back to, and people look at me like, but you're the innovation person. You're supposed to be excited about the cool technology. And I am. But if your processes are chaotic and your data is not accurate and not available and is a mess, and you automate in that environment, now you've automated chaos. And oftentimes you frustrate your workforce. And so they don't have the ability to be successful. And I think that's part of the problem. So in that kind of initial look, once you start looking at your processes, how did Blue Buffalo think about, when we bring automation in, it's gonna touch our existing workforce, and it's gonna have to work in tandem with them. How did y'all think about those processes?
Yeah, if you are taking that incremental approach and automating in an existing facility, you really do have to define that scope of what you're automating and understand that process, and clean up those processes before you automate, so that it's well defined before you define that solution. I would also really reinforce, make sure you understand the reliability of your surrounding processes. So you might feel great about what you're automating, you might feel great about the solution, but if your inputs and your outputs aren't clean, for example, if you don't have great inventory accuracy feeding into an automated solution, you don't want to end up with a garbage in, garbage out scenario. So take that extra care, not only to define what you're automating, but feel really good that you've got reliability surrounding what you're automating, so that the whole thing works well together. It gets back to that point of investing in a stable operation, understanding what's working, what's not, what you need to clean up before you head into it. And then I guess I would also reinforce safety. Safety has to be top of mind. If you're going to be putting automate, minimize, avoid mixing people traffic with robot traffic, define the rules, make sure everybody understands as you're designing it and implementing it, what are those rules, and think through all the safety implications, because that has to be paramount.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. When you start moving, particularly autonomous mobile robots around your building, and you have MHE equipment going at the same time, and you have pedestrians walking in the same space, all of those have to share those same facilities. And so how do you put in those components that help ensure safety, not just from a physical perspective, but how do you change your processes and your training and make sure your people are ready to adopt that automation in a way that's going to keep them keep them safe every day. And then to your point about, cleaning up the processes, oftentimes when you put in a piece of automation, you've got to think about how's this process going to change when the automation comes in, and let's make sure that we're automating not just a clean process, but a process that's going to work automated. And so you may have to change pieces of it to make that automation more successful at the end than you really kind of were thinking about it in the beginning of time. And one of the most challenging pieces of implementing automation is always the IT component, and how do you make sure that those things are all going to talk to your warehouse management systems and your labor management systems and all of those things. There's another complexity that gets added in when you add in automation, and being able to have those systems talk together and optimize versus throw roadblocks in the way of that automation is a huge issue. And so I think that's a key piece of looking at automation as well.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience.
Yeah, go ahead. I would love to
It
hear
sounds like you're
how
speaking from experience.
I am speaking from significant experience. So background of technology to start with. So I know how this goes, but it goes back to the chaos in the process, right? The more you can define and the more you can ensure that all of the pieces are going to work together, because the automation itself is not an island. And so the people have to work with it. Your systems have to work with it. The physical building has to work with it. It all has to come together. So I'd love to hear, Jeff, from you. I have a lot of customers who are hesitant, I'll say, to think about implementing emerging technologies, even if the ROI is there. And yet a lot of times where we find the most innovative things and the most transformational opportunities is with emerging technologies. And so, how I know you've always been a proponent of innovation and emerging technologies, but how did that work for you going to your leadership to get buy-in to make some automation changes that were a little more cutting edge, I'll say?
Yeah, well, I mean, our leadership team expects cost savings. That's part of our business model, is to drive those ongoing cost savings. And in today's environment, cost savings get harder and harder to come by. So, oftentimes you have to reach into something that's innovative or cutting edge to get that next, field of opportunity for cost savings. So, that helps. I will also say our leadership team expects service and reliability, as do our customers. So as you're venturing into something, on the innovation front, the cost savings associated kind of open the door to the conversation, but then having a solid plan that protects that service and that reliability that's so critical to the business and that our customers absolutely expect, laying that out and having a plan to get there, I think is super important.
I'd love to know, Jeff, as well, as your company looks at some of these projects being longer term, little higher investment. I know a lot of customers are moving off of our hurdle rate is this has got to pay back within 12 months, right? They're looking at a longer term strategy, and a lot of that is around just the labor resiliency aspect of what's going on in the market. We want to make sure that 5 years from now we have enough labor to do the business and meet our strategy and our goals. So love to hear kind of your thoughts on that look at automation, and how do you take a really more long-term view of the cost analysis and the ROI?
Yeah, very, very good question. Yeah, when you look at the trends on labor availability in the future, I mean, that should give a kind of an alarm bell to say we need to get ahead of it. We need to be thinking about it. In my opinion, it's hard, or my experience, I guess, it's hard to justify an investment in automation based on where that labor availability might go in the future, which then dials back to tangible costs that kind of get the ball rolling. You got to have some sort of ROI that gets the ball rolling, because my experience has been if you've got a project with a solid cost savings, automation or anything else. But if you've got a good cost savings project, my experience is you can find a way to fund it, whether it's internal dollars or through good partnerships or however. Because if you're taking dollars out of the supply chain, those dollars are getting saved somewhere. So how do you get your arms around where those savings are and put together the right way to fund a project to grab those savings? That has to get the ball rolling. Now then, as momentum picks up and you're having success and depending on what's going on in your local labor markets, there might be drivers that help, I don't know, boost things or steer things in a direction. And you'll be glad that you got ahead of that curve with a good foundational cost savings investment. But that's my experience. Yeah, good question.
So Blue Buffalo is one of the great partners that Kenco is fortunate to work with. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you partner with your vendors, your third-party logistics providers to help with some of this, recognizing what's out there, finding the right solutions, bringing them to you, and then working in true parallel for you to say, these are my problems, these are my priorities, and how do you work with your partner to really identify those and work forward in an automation solution?
Yeah, I mean, many organizations, including our company, have great internal expertise, but you got to recognize that nobody knows it all. So finding the right partners is super critical. Getting that external help, whether it's through a trusted 3PL or other external partnership. Choosing the right partners is critical. Expertise might fall in different areas. Maybe a company's got great expertise in the machines, the robots, the hardware, but the system side of things is evolving so quickly. That might be where you need to go tap into some external expertise. You referenced it a few minutes ago, Kristi, around all of the connections to the systems that are so important to make things work seamlessly through the operation. I have found that is an area where things are evolving quickly, and getting the right partners in the boat with you is really important. And it's not even getting just the right partners, but it's that foundation of trust, so that as you're working with one partner, two partners, whoever's in the project, that you've got that trust, that foundational understanding of what we're doing together and where we're going. Because you don't want to get halfway through the project or into implementation, right, and then you're pointing fingers because you didn't have the trust or you weren't on the same page. You do not want to find yourself in that situation. So, thinking back to the comments I made to start the conversation around getting your network roadmap in focus and the right buildings, the right places, and part of that is, you're right, if you're a 3PL operation, getting the right 3PLs or whatever right partners engaged in your long-term network roadmap is important as a foundation before you even start going down the path of automation investment, because things can get tricky and you have to react and pivot and customers respond in certain ways that might be unexpected, and as you go through those bumps, that partnership and the ability to hold hands and have that same line of sight as to where we're going, I can't emphasize that enough.
I think that's a great point, Jeff. It's about collaboration, and it's about that view of we're in the boat together, not provider, you're out there on your own, hope it goes well for you, meet my metrics. It's very much, let's do this together. Let's figure out how we're going to move forward together. Let's figure out how we're going to pivot together when those bumps happen, right? And we have a level of trust to know that, hey, been through these things before, we'll make it through it again. It's how do we build that collaboration?
Yeah, I don't want to overlook the importance of a good contract and the right accountability, and everybody defining the scope of the work that they're accountable for. You have to do that. That's just basics. But beyond just the words in a contract and the metrics that you're accountable for, the ability to work through and solve problems with a trusted partner is very important.
And I think that applies to all the vendors in that value chain of automation, right? So you have to have the right automation partners, you have to have the right systems partners, the right 3PL. Everybody has to be working toward the same goal. And you're right, that accountability has to be in place for us to call each other on, hey, well, this is not what we said. But to be able to move forward together and find those opportunities. And I think what excites me about automation and going through this process, if you have the right plan and everything's laid out the way it should be, as you execute, you're going to find more opportunities, right? So how can you optimize even further what you're already in process of working on? And I love that concept. So I think one of the things that partners can help with, and Tanya said this in our chat, really is with that ROI and how can we, coming from a technology background, I always say don't trust everything the vendor says. So how do we work together to really ensure that we've thought about all those things? Jeff, you were talking about a little bit earlier, and looking internally, there's money there that maybe you didn't think about. Maybe you're going to do something inside the four walls of the warehouse that's going to positively impact your transportation costs or your demand planning costs. And so how do you take all those things into effect? How does the vendor help with what they've seen and all the partners they work with, and your 3PL the same? So I think there's certainly opportunity there to really drive value in that whole chain of partnerships that you're working with. That's a great point.
Yeah, that Tanya's comment in there, time is money. Absolutely right. Once you start spending those dollars and investing in automation, you need to start showing an ROI and doing that groundwork of having that clarity on the scope of what you're automating. The surrounding processes are clean and they're going to support it, and you've got a trusted partner so you can move fast and you're not going to waste time bickering over things. All of that stuff is foundational. So when you start spending those dollars, time is money, and you can start getting your ROI. That's a really good comment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't met a customer yet that was not interested in making sure there was ROI around any type of emerging technology and automation. So that is always a piece of the puzzle that has to be answered. Yeah. So, and that's certainly how we approach things. Jeff, I know we're getting close to time and wrapping this up for our audience here, and we'd love to hear questions from you guys if you have them. But are there any final thoughts you wanted to express to our audience today, Jeff, around just making sure automation is successful as you step into it?
Well, I guess I would finish by saying, even for groups, companies that are slow to invest, which it's fine to be more conservative and see how various things evolve, but it's not going away. The labor market is going to continue to evolve. Improvements in technology are going to continue to evolve, and it's gonna bring forward that cost curve of when various ROIs start to make sense sooner rather than later. So even if you're maybe a conservative approach on investing, you should be at least aware of what's happening in the marketplace, so that when the time does come to invest, you're ready to act sooner rather than later, because you don't want to find yourself in a labor market where you can't find workers and you wished you would have started automating 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thanks so
much. It's not a message of fear. That's just a message of being proactive so that you're ready to go to move fast and respond when the time comes.
Absolutely. Jeff, thanks for your time. Thanks for letting me pick your brain for a few minutes here and really listen to how you think about automation within the Blue Buffalo organization. I'll say, if you're here because you wanted to hear how Kenco works with our customers, we're always there to help you with automating something, whether you're testing a single robot or you're putting in an auto store solution. That's what Kenco exists to help with. Our discussion today that Jeff and I had is the first of a three-part series that we're going to have. And so we'd love for you to join us again the week of June 17th for the second in our series. We'd love for you to follow Kenco and Blue Buffalo on LinkedIn, obviously, and then to learn more about our MHE solutions, you can go to kencogroup.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Kristi, I'll say it's always good to see you. It's good to chat, and I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.